All right, Biology 120. We are today on the Bremerton campus where we're going to take a look at first a few plants that are around campus that will not necessarily be quizzing identification plants, but they are interesting to talk about nonetheless, and since we have them here on campus, I will show them to you. So first we're going to start with this ginkgo tree. And you can see it has very interesting shaped leaves, and this is a gymnosperm plant, even though it doesn't have the needle-like leaves that most gymnosperm plants have. You see it has these fan-shaped, get up here, fan-shaped leaves, and a very interesting venation pattern called dichotomous branching of the veins. So remember, dichotomous means like a dichotomous key. It splits into two every time. So that's what the veins are doing in that leaf. They split into two branches every time the veins branch in that leaf. So these unique fan-shaped leaves, sometimes with a little lobe in the tip on this one there. See the little lobe in the tip on that one? The scientific name for ginkgo is Ginkgo biloba, named for those two lobes on the leaf that you can see. And they come from China. They were originally thought to be extinct. We had fossils of the ginkgo tree before we knew that they were still alive, and then they were found still growing in a monastery in China. The monks had kept the seeds growing while the plants in the wild around the area had all died out and gone extinct. But now it's used all over the world as a urban street tree because they're very tolerant of pollution. They can keep growing in very with all the exhaust of cars right along the street, and they're very interesting in the shape of the leaves as well as the fall color. You can see these are already starting to turn yellow, so this yellow fall color that they have is another nice feature. And then they do also produce a seed, which is not in a typical cone structure of the gymnosperms, but rather it's in sort of a fleshy coating around the seed. And some people try to plant just the male trees. These are also dioecious. They come in male and female trees. And so some will try to plant just the male trees because the female trees are the ones that produce the seeds. And sometimes those, when they fall on the sidewalk and get squished and walked on, they start to rot and have a stinky smell. So to avoid that, you can plant just the male trees. But otherwise, it's a nice street tree to have, and we have several here on campus. This is right around the main Circle Drive area, or also in one of the far parking lots. There are some much larger, older ginkgo trees that have been there longer. So ginkgo, Ginkgo, biloba, Biloba, and the family name is Ginkgoaceae. So that one's pretty easy to remember. Now we're going to see the giant sequoia tree. There are several of them on campus. So you can see how large it is with this nice conical shape that it typically grows in, and then I'll get a little closer. Okay, now we're up at the giant sequoia tree, and this is one of the most massive or largest trees on Earth. It does hold the record. There's one in California, not necessarily the one on our campus, but the one in California, the giant General Sherman tree, holds the record for the world's most massive tree. And you can see it has these scale-like leaves. It's evergreen. It's in the conifer group of gymnosperms. Here's one of its cones. So it's not a large cone, and it's not a spiky cone. It's actually doesn't, it's very solid, very hard, but doesn't hurt to hold it. Doesn't have spines on it. And you can see the trunk in there. Very large trunks are typical on these types of trees. So the scientific name is sequoia, Sequoiadendron, Sequoiadendron giganteum, Giganteum. And the family is the Cupressaceae family, so that's the same family as our western red cedar, which also has scale-like leaves, if you remember that. So same family as western red cedar, but this is the Sequoiadendron giganteum, a giant sequoia tree. Not necessarily one that we would see for future testing, really, but an interesting tree since we have it here on campus that you can learn about. And now, just past our giant sequoia, there are a couple of interesting trees that stick way up tall above the parking lot here. These are giant redwoods, and I'll show you them up close when I get over there. And here's a better look at the redwood leaves. So you can see it's very similar actually to the western hemlock, where the branches are more flattened. The leaves come out on that two sides, making it more two-dimensional, feather-like. But the needles are all about the same size. There's not a mix of those two different sizes of needles like in the western hemlock. And it does also have the white lines of stomata on the back sides of the needle. And here's the cone, very similar to the sequoia cone, but smaller, much smaller than it. So this is redwood. Sequoia sempervirens is the scientific name. Here is the other entrance to the Barner landscape. There's the gate down there at the end of this little drive, so you can't get through this way, but you can walk along this little driveway, and this is where you'll see the redwoods, and there's some other things you can see here. It's just down from the parking lot at the child care center. Here's a good look at one that we haven't done yet, one of our important trees in this area. This is our big leaf maple, and you can see here the size of some of the leaves, why it gets its name, big leaf maple. It does have that maple shaped 5-lobed leaf and opposite leaves on the branch. A little bit hard to tell in this shady spot. And another thing you'll usually notice on the maples, although it's not on this particular one, hopefully I'll find some later on, is the seeds or the fruits, which are a winged type of fruit, a winged seed that hopefully I will find for you. So this is big leaf maple. It's usually a large tree, although this one is a younger tree, so not quite as large. But these large maple-shaped 5-lobed leaves, and Acer, the scientific name Acer, A-C-E-R, macrophyllum, M-A-C-R-O-P-H-Y-L-L-U-M, macrophyllum, which means big leaf. So Acer macrophyllum. And the family is the Aceraceae, or it's recently actually been changed into the Sapindaceae, but I'll take either one on quizzes. Aceraceae or Sapindaceae for the family. Big leaf maple. Alright, this is similar to one that we saw last week. We saw the dull Oregon grape, which is related to this. This is the tall Oregon grape. And one of the ways you can tell the difference is by the number of leaflets. The one we saw last week, the dull Oregon grape, it's usually a smaller plant lower to the ground. And it has more leaflets, 9 to 19 leaflets. This one is only going to have about 5 to 7 leaflets. So this is the tall Oregon grape. And it does have a few fruits down here. You can see those little cluster of blue grape-like fruits, but they're not true grapes. But this is a compound leaf. Again, these are leaflets. And the scientific name is Mahonia aquifolium. Mahonia aquifolium. And it is in the Berberidaceae family. All right, so this is the side path into the Barner landscape if you want to come study at the Bremerton campus. I'm not going to necessarily mark the plants in there, but you can come and study or collect on campus here. So this is the child care building number 2, and between these fences is a little path you can get through. Here's a review one that we saw last week, and if you try to get through this little path, there's a lot of this on the path, so beware, because it is a prickly, remember these are prickles, not actually thorns, prickly plant. So this of course is our Himalayan blackberry, which is Rubus discolor or Rubus armeniacus, either one I will take, and the family is Rosaceae also. So it's this compound leaf, palmately compound leaf with leaflets. This is all one leaf. They're alternately arranged on the prickly stem. There's not flowers on this particular one at the time, but many times you'll see the white flowers, or it could be going, starting to produce the fruits, the blackberry fruits. Here's another common maple that is seen frequently in our area. This is our vine maple. Although the name vine is a little bit of a misnomer, it's a small tree, not a large tree like the big leaf maple, but it's not a vine either. You can see it's maple-shaped leaf, although usually more than 5 lobes, 7 to 9 lobes on this palmate maple-shaped leaf, palmately veined, palmately lobed. And you can see the seeds or fruits on this vine maple. So the 2 winged seeds that are called samaras attached to each other at about 180 degrees usually on the vine maple. Again, you can see that up here. So this is Acer circinatum, Acercircinnatum, Acer circinatum, with these palmately veined, maple-shaped leaves, 7 to 9 lobes, and opposite on the branch, let's see, you can see they're opposite there. And the family is again Aceraceae or Sapindaceae if you're looking in a newer book. All right, here's one of our native plants that we will see several times. This is Indian plum. You can see the leaves are an elliptical kind of shape. And frequently, especially starting about midsummer, you'll start to see the leaves turning yellow. So there's lots of yellow leaves. This is one of the first trees to start losing its leaves in the fall. It's also one of the first to bloom in the spring. So if you're driving down the roads in this early spring and you see a bunch of white flowers on the sides of the highways and roads, a lot of times it is this tree blooming. So this is Indian plum with these elliptical, deciduous leaves. They're fairly thin and they're kind of a yellowish green. They're not a really dark green to start with. They're alternate arrangement on the stem. And one of the fruits that you might find on some of the trees about now is up here. It's a little bit dried out, but this dark bluish purple fruit is like a plum. It's a drupe hanging off the tree, so you may see some of those, and that will help you to identify it if you find that. So this is Indian plum. The scientific name is Oemeleria. Starts with an O, O-E-M-L-E-R-I-A, Oemeleria cerasiformis, C-E-R-A-S-I-F-O-R-M-I-S, and the family is the Rosaceae family. So Oemeleria cerasiformis, Rosaceae family, Indian plum. So this property at the Bremerton campus, the Barner property, has this old house. All of this property was donated to the college, and so the people used to live in this house, and they had lots of stuff planted in their yard, basically, that is not necessarily native plants. I'm going to be focusing more on the native plants that are growing around here as well. The house is not used for anything right now, so of course stay out of there, don't mess with that. I'm not sure what they're going to ever be able to do with it, but it's here for now. But we get to look at the plants. All right, here's another new one for today. This is hazelnut, beaked hazelnut, one of our native plants. If you touch the leaf, it's a little bit fuzzy, so it's pubescent. It has hairs on both the top and the bottom, so you can feel those. It's fairly soft, not quite as soft as the thimbleberry that remember we saw last week, but it does have that pubescence of hairs on it. It's cordate or heart-shaped at the base of the leaf where it's attached. They're alternate leaves on the stem, serrate, and a little bit of an acuminate type of tip here at the tip of the leaf. Frequently you'll see that. So this is hazelnut, Corylus, C-O-R-Y-L-U-S, cornuta, C-O-R-N-U-T-A, Corylus cornuta, and the family is the Betulaceae family, so same family as the alder, and kind of you can see a little bit of similarity in the leaf with the alder as well. Has the pinnate veins in the leaf. So Corylus cornuta, hazelnut. All right, this one is our black cottonwood, Populus, P-O-P-U-L-U-S, balsamifera, B-A-L-S-A-M-I-F-E-R-A, Populus balsamifera. And this one has a lot of variation in the leaf shape that you will see on it. The ones right here are very ovate with an acuminate tip. Sometimes you will see them nearly deltoid, very triangular shape. Sometimes they will be more elliptic. But one thing you will almost always find, oh, and sometimes they can even be cordate or heart-shaped at the base, like this one. There's another one. But on the back side, they will be very pale and have these brownish hairs on the bottom of the leaf. So that is usually a good way to remember this one, with these brownish hairs on the bottom. Here's some more brownish hairs. So Populus balsamifera, the black cottonwood, and it is in the willow family, the Salicaceae, S-A-L-I-C-A-C-E-A, Salicaceae. Okay, this is a review one. Here is our thimbleberry again, reviewing that one from last week. So this is Rubus parvifolius, which means small leaves, but it doesn't have small leaves. They're actually pretty big and they're fuzzy. Remember, this is nature's toilet paper. Because even though this is in the blackberry family, this one is not thorny. And you can see some of the fruits down here, this red thimble-shaped blackberry, raspberry type fruit. Thimbleberry in the Rosaceae family, Rubus parvifolius. Okay, correction, Rubus parviflorus, not parvifolius. The one that's parvifolius is Vaccinium parvifolius, the red huckleberry, which does have small leaves. This one is parviflorus. Even I get those confused. Here we have an apple tree that you will sometimes see escaped from cultivation, similar to the way the cherry trees will sometimes escape from cultivation. And it looks very much like a cherry. The leaves are very similar shaped. They're serrate, alternate, kind of a elliptical to ovate shape. But they will not have the glands. Remember those glands we saw at the base of the cherry tree leaves? It will not have the glands on the leaves. And you may see apples actually growing in the trees. There is a crabapple that does grow native around here, but this is the escaped cultivated apple The scientific name is Malus, M-A-L-U-S, sylvestris, S-Y-L-V-E-S-T-R-I-S, Malus sylvestris, and it's in the Rosaceae family. And the bark can be similar to cherry tree bark as well, but not quite as prominent with the lenticels. You see some lenticels, but it's not quite that striking horizontal lenticel appearance of the cherry bark. Here's our native dogwood, our western flowering dogwood. And one thing you notice with the dogwood leaves is it usually has these arching veins. It's pinnately veined, but the veins don't go straight to the edge of the leaf. They arch up or curve up towards this tip of the leaf, and the tip is kind of acuminate or attenuate, drawn out into that point. So it has those arching veins. It's also oppositely arranged on the branch. So opposite leaves, arching veins, and here's the fruit that develops after the flower. So in the flower, which you would see in the spring, it usually has those 6 large white, look like petals, but they're not actually petals. They're bracts, B-R-A-C-T-S, bracts. They're actually leaves that have been modified to look like petals. But then the flowers are actually a cluster of small flowers that eventually form this fruit. So this is a clustered fruit or a multiple fruit where many ovaries have fused together, and it will turn bright red eventually when it is fully developed with seeds inside. So western flowering dogwood. This is Cornus natalii, C-O-R-N-U-S, Cornus natalii, N-U-T-A-L-L-I-I, natalii, and the family is the Cornaceae family. Oh, one other interesting thing about dogwood leaves, let's see if I can get it to do it. Not sure you're going to be able to see it well, but right down there, when you tear the leaves across the veins, across those arching veins, it sort of leaves a white line hanging between the veins, or a white thread hanging between the veins. So that's another interesting way that you can tell the dogwoods. Here's a review of our trailing blackberry. So it's down on the ground, compound, pinnately compound leaves with 3 leaflets usually. So this is Rubus ursinus, or the other common name for this is bearberry. Ursinus means bear, and the family Rosaceae. Right, here's a review of our sword fern, Polystichum munitum, in the Dryopteridaceae. So this compound frond, pinnately compound, with spores on the backs of the leaves, backs of the fronds. Here's a review of bracken fern, Pteridium aquilinum, the family Dinstaidaceae. So remember, this is all one leaf in the bracken fern. It's a twice or sometimes 3 or 4 times compound leaf or frond, and then those spores are not going to be visible because they're tucked up under the rolled margin of the frond. So bracken fern, Pteridium aquilinum. Here's another review of our shore pine, Pinus contorta. It has the shorter needles with 2 needles in a fascicle, and then a smallish cone. Usually the pine trees grow kind of short and twisted in this type of environment. So shore pine, Pinus contorta, family Pinaceae. Here's a review of our Douglas fir. So the needle-like leaves, but usually coming out 3-dimensionally around the branch, so all around all sides. And then that cone with the little mouse feet bracts coming out from the scales of the cone. This is a newer cone, so it's not brown yet, it's still green. Douglas fir, Pseudotsuga menziesii in the family Pinaceae. Here's a review of the holly, American holly, or this might be English holly. Ilex, I-L-E-X, opaca, O-P-A-C-A. Remember, it has the spiny leaf margin. These are single leaves, though. It looks a little bit like the Oregon grape, except Oregon grape is compound leaves. These are simple leaves with the spiny margins. Ilex opaca, and the family is Aquifoliaceae. Here's a review of our Pacific madrone. So the evergreen leaves, but not toothed, fairly entire elliptical shape. And then that reddish peeling bark, and you can see this is a really old tree with lots of very peeling bark. Good example of a really old Pacific madrone, Arbutus menziesii in the Ericaceae family. So we have two new types of ferns here in this spot. The majority of it, this first one, is lady fern, or Atherium, A-T-H-Y-R-I-U-M, Felix femina, F-I-L-I-X hyphen F-E-M-I-N-A, Felix femina. This one, as you can see, is a little bit more delicate looking, why it's called lady fern, and it has spores on the backs of the frond. A little bit of it visible there. Those little brown spots are the spores. That's where you'll find them. You'll also notice the penny on this frond are a little bit more toothed around the margin. So this one is twice compound, unlike our sword fern, which is just once compound. And this one is more toothed along the margin, and it's not evergreen like the sword fern is. So this one will die down in the winter and come back in the spring. So lady fern, Atherium, Felix femina, but it is also Dryopteridaceae, that same family with sword fern. And then we have another one, the maidenhair fern, and this is a really interesting one. It is compound, but notice how it splits the palmately. So it's more palmately compound, and then it sort of reverts into pinnately compound out on the tips. So it's a more different sort of looking fern leaf than what we've seen before. And also you'll notice on the penny, usually only one edge of the penny is sort of toothed rather than on both sides, just that one edge. And then the spores on this one are also sort of tucked under little rolled margins. So you can see on the back where it looks a little bit like it's been folded over, and the spores are under those edges. So maidenhair fern, and the scientific name is coming to me. I will have to think of it. So maidenhair fern, this is Adiantum, A-D-I-A-N-T-U-M, pedatum, P-E-D-A-T-U-M. Pedatum refers to feet, like ped, so these kind of look like feet. But it's also very delicate looking maidenhair fern for that name. And the family is the Pteridaceae, P-T, the P is silent, P-T-E-R-I-D-A-C-E-A. Pteridaceae. Another nice look at our vine maple, Acer circinale. Alright, here's one we haven't talked about yet, but you probably see growing along the roadsides frequently in the spring with its yellow flowers. This one is past flowering. It's already developed its fruits and seeds, which you see here. This is Scotch broom, which is not native in this area, but it's an introduced weed that has become invasive, and it starts taking over a lot of areas and crowding out the native plants in those areas. So they've been trying to get rid of it in this garden on campus, but this spring, with not many people here to take care of things, the Scotch broom is starting to grow back in. So we'll have to start working on that again. But you can see it has compound leaves. They're trifoliate compound leaves, so 3 leaflets. Of course, sound kind of like clover, but it's a shrub. And it would have those yellow flowers in the spring, and then it produces these bean-like fruits with the seeds inside. And you can notice it also has green stems. The stems stay green rather than turning brown. Further down, it does turn brown bark color. So this is Scotch broom. The scientific name is Cytissus, C-Y-T-I-S-S-U-S, Scoparius, S-C-O-P-A-R-I-U-S. And the family is the Fabaceae family, which is the bean family. Cytissus scoparius. Another introduced weed that you can see growing in this area is a sweet pea, Lathyrus, L-A-T-H-I-R-U-Y-R-U-S, Lathyrus, latifolia, L-A-T-I-F-O-L-I-A. It also has compound leaves, but you see that the 3rd leaflet is modified into a tendril, so this is a vine. Also has green stems, and the stems become flattened and winged. So some of the tissue grows in a flattened structure on the sides of the stems, forming this sort of wing. And then the flower is a type of typical pea flower, a papilionaceous flower, which we'll talk more about that structure later on. And it would form a bean type of fruit also, with seeds inside. Lathyrus latifolia in the bean family Fabaceae. Here is another type of blackberry. This is the evergreen blackberry, or also known as the cut leaf blackberry, because you can see it has the compound leaf, but then the leaflets are divided again, so it's more compound. It's at least twice compound, sometimes 3 times compound, and just very highly divided in the leaf structure. Here's the flowers, a typical blackberry type flower. It's in the rose family, so rose type of flower. And even developing fruit, blackberry type fruit, which are quite tasty when they're ripe. So you can have a snack when you come down. So this is the evergreen blackberry, which is Rubus lacinatus, L-A-C-I-N-A-T-U-S, lacinatus, which lacinate means divided or cut up in the leaf. So it refers to that highly divided double compound leaf structure. Rubus lacinatus. And here's our dull Oregon grape that we saw last time. So it does have the compound leaves with many more leaflets usually than the tall Oregon grape. So 9 to 19, or even I think 21 leaflets I've counted before. Not quite a spiny margin as the tall Oregon grape also. And you can see the fruits developing here. It would have yellow flowers in the spring and then produces this cluster of fruits that turn a grapey color. So it's called Oregon grape, but it's not related to grapes. So this is Mahonia nervosa in the Berberidaceae family. And here is another review of Salal, Gaultheria chalon in the Ericaceae family. So these evergreen, slightly toothed margins, ovate or elliptical shaped leaves, and it's developing its fruits here. Dark black, blue-black berries, which are edible but not very tasty. So Salal, Gaultheria chalon in the Ericaceae family. Right, here's another new one. This is Ocean Spray, named for its sort of foamy looking flower. Looks like spray coming off the ocean, I guess. But notice its leaves. So kind of a ovate or egg-shaped leaf but the base is a very wedge shaped, a very cuneate. It comes to a point at the base, and then it's toothed only on really the top half of the leaf, and it can even become lobed. Let's see, this one is a little bit more lobed, so there's going to be a good bit of variation in these types of leaves on this plant. And it's a little bit pubescent or hairy on the back sides of the leaf, a little bit lighter color. You can see the hairs sparkling in the sun there. So this is ocean spray. The scientific name is Holodiscus discolor. Has this cluster of flowers, this inflorescence, a panicle that we'll talk more about later, with the stamens kind of stick out of the flower, forming this sort of fuzzy or foamy looking bit. So Holodiscus, Holodiscus, discolor, discolor, Holodiscus discolor, and it is in the not Caprifoliaceae. Hang on. It is in the Rosaceae family. But very small flowers, not usually the showy flowers that you see in many of the other members of the rose family. So Rosaceae for the family, ocean spray, Holodiscus discolor.